Welcome to the latest 123 Reg webinar. Today, Matt McNeil will demonstrate how email marketing can help small businesses grow.
Hi, I'm Matt McNeil. I'm going to be taking you through today our Discovering Email Marketing webinar to show you some basic concepts that you need to know to be successful with your email marketing. So let's start by looking at the challenges that face you as a marketeer and how email can help you with these. The first question most people really ask is email marketing still relevant? There are so many different digital channels available today, and email marketing has been around for almost the longest of any of them. Is it something that should still actually be an active part of your toolkit? Well, if you take a look at the graph here, which shows you the millions of monthly active users for each of the major channels online, you can see that actually email by far and away has the biggest impact of any of the other channels. In fact, if you were to stack the users of every social network put together, you're still at only about half the number of users that you've got with email overall. Email has a reach of about 3.3 billion people. So it's most definitely still a very relevant part of the toolkit. And in fact, as we'll come on to later, it's really the only way that you have of directly communicating with an individual and being able to do that in a mass way. Don't just take our word for it though. eConsultancy did a census in 2014 of marketeers, and actually 68% of those marketeers ranked email marketing as having a good or an excellent return on investment for them. That was the best overall digital channel of any of them. So it really is a very powerful weapon to have in your marketing arsenal. So where are we today? Adobe did a survey in 2014 asking digital marketers to rank themselves on several different criteria, and 48% of digital marketers consider themselves proficient. So 52% thought that they weren't actually proficient in digital marketing, and only 40% would actually class their own marketing as effective. So there's clearly a lot to be learned here, and there's a lot of things that you can do very easily to actually get ahead of your competition. So what are the business challenges that email marketing can help you with? Well, there are 4 key challenges that you should be aware of and that we're going to address today. Firstly, it's increasing revenue and profits, usually the key thing for any business. Then we've got growing your customer base and your market share, enhancing the experience for your customers, and finally we're also going to take a look at compliance, risk and regulatory issues that might affect you, and some very quick things that you can do to stay on the right side of the law when you're emailing. Permission. Permission is the basis of all good email marketing, and it can really be summed up with this image. Imagine when you're marketing that this image is on the inbox of every subscriber that you're actually contacting. In effect, if you haven't got their permission to contact them, you shouldn't be in their inbox in the first place. We call this practice permission marketing, and it was a term first coined by the well-known marketer Seth Godin in about 1999, and he defines it very neatly as the privilege, rather than the right, of delivering anticipated, personal and relevant messages to people who actually want to receive them. Now this is the key thing. If you don't have permission to contact someone, then your email is going to be seen in their eyes as spam. Without permission, there's no difference between your communication, no matter how legitimate you think it is, and an unsolicited piece of email in their inbox. So view permission as being the core part of your practice. So why is permission important? Well, firstly, it's the law. If you're operating in the UK, or indeed across most of the world now, there's very strict legislations around who you can and can't email and the practices that you need to follow. In the UK, you actually have to be able to have and prove explicit permission from each recipient unless you meet several other important criteria. So if you don't have direct permission, then you can still email people, but you have to meet all of these points. You have to obtain the details either via a sale or via inquiries about a sale. You have to be marketing to them similar products. You have to offer them the chance to opt out at the point you collected their data. You have to offer them the opportunity to opt out every time you email them subsequently. The last contact you had with them has to be less than 12 months ago, and you must include a variety of company information in every email that you send. So the barrier is set very, very high unless you've got explicit permission. It's much easier to start with explicit permission from the very beginning. There's a couple of other key points that you need to be aware of as well. In every email message that you send out, in order to comply with legislation, you need to make sure that you're including your company's legal name. If you're a registered company, you've got to include your registration number. You need to include a physical contact address and contact details in every email that you send. You also need to be aware that if you're capturing people's personal data, then you might need to be registered under the Data Protection Act with the Information Commissioner's Office. It's well worth checking whether you need to be registered by visiting their site at ico.gov.uk and completing their quick self-service questionnaire. But more importantly than the legal side of things, without permission, a message is just spam. Permission is all about developing trust between you and your subscriber. The ultimate goal behind any email marketing campaign is to take someone from their initial interest in what you have to say through to being interested enough to find out more about your organisation, to becoming a paying customer, and then ideally right the way through to where they're a loyal repeat customer and actually referring other people to you. And that's all about building trust with those customers, and that starts right from the very beginning when you're first getting permission from them. The Direct Marketing Association reckons that 90% of consumers will subscribe to emails of trusted brands. And it's a well-known fact that loyal customers actually account for about 80% of company profit. So if you're going to be successful, you really need to be looking at the lifetime value of your customer, and permission marketing can really help here. So how do you go about getting permission in the first place then? Well, there are a few key points to remember. Firstly, make sure you're asking for it. Permission can only be given to you directly. It can't come from a third party. Someone can't give permission on someone else's behalf. Next, it must be actively given, so people have to actually opt in rather than opt out of hearing from you. And most importantly, permission has to be fresh. People have very short memories online, so permission has to be given to you and you need to act on it quickly before people forget what they've done. Next, sell it. Ultimately, you're always asking for people's most valuable resource, their time. Time to actually opt in the first place, but then time to read your communications as well. So you should treat asking for permission like any other sales process. Make sure that you're clearly explaining the benefits to people, giving them a real reason to subscribe to you. And finally, make sure you set expectations. So let people know how often you'll be in touch with them and get things off to the right start. Remember, it's all about trust. So everything you can do to set people's expectations and then make sure you meet them will come in value later on. So moving on from permission, the next step is data. It's all about data, capturing information and what you do with it. Now, the key thing to remember is that there's no value in data in and of itself. The value is in what you do with it. As KPMG say, high-performing businesses don't simply gather data, they gain insights from the data that they already possess. So as I say, it's what you do with the information that really counts. But first, we have to go about capturing that data in the first place. So how do you get it? Well, using 123Reg's email marketing tool, it's simple to create data capture forms that you can use on your website and in other areas. Firstly, make sure that you're using easy to find, easy to fill out and easy to submit forms, and make sure you're promoting them everywhere that you can. So that's linking to them from your emails, from your website, from your social media channels. Every opportunity that you get to promote the chance to opt in, make sure you're taking it. When you're creating your forms, keep them short. Make them easy for people to read and understand, and make it really clear what you're collecting the data for in the first place. Again, this all comes into this idea of promoting trust. So tell subscribers why you're capturing their information, what they're opting into, and remind them that you're going to protect their data and keep it safe. If you can, offer a real incentive to users. Give them some value for completing the form. So if you're an online shop, that could be providing them with a discount or free shipping. If you're in the business-to-business space, then perhaps it's giving them a download to a white paper or some information that shows you as an expert in your field. Or if you're a service business or a shop, you could have a promotion there that encourages people to either call you or visit you in store. And lastly, on your form, make sure that you have a clear and compelling call to action. So ultimately, you want people to hit the button that subscribes them to your list. Make it really clear that's what you want them to do. Here's an example of one of the 123Reg email marketing forms in action on a live customer website. So here you can see there's a very clear and compelling message. The user knows exactly what they're going to get. They clearly say that they're going to keep people's details safe. And the call to action is really clear. There's a big subscribe free button there. Users know exactly what to do in order to be able to subscribe. And forms like this are very, very successful in building a mailing list and building it quickly. A real way to get maximum advantage when you're collecting data is to use welcome emails. Now, this is very rarely done, so it's a chance for you to really get ahead of your competition. But welcome emails are actually the most read emails that you'll ever send. They generally get around 4 times more opens and 5 times more clicks than any other email that you send out subsequently. Now, that's because you're acting quickly on someone's response. With the 123Reg email marketing tool, you can trigger a welcome email to be sent immediately after someone subscribes. The most important thing with your welcome email is to have a clear goal for the email campaign. So understand what it is that you want people to do when they receive that email. So if you're trading online or you have a store, it could be incentivizing a purchase, in which case you might want to give them a discount or a special offer, or even just prompt them with information about your most popular product or service. If you're in the business-to-business space, then you might want to ask people to whitelist the email address that you're using to send your campaigns from, so that you don't need to worry about spam filters in the future. Or you might want to use this as an opportunity to capture additional data by linking to another capture form. Now that someone has already taken the first step and begun to trust you, it's a great opportunity to ask for further information that you can use for your marketing. So that could be something like postcode, because you can use for location-based searches in the email marketing tool. Or it could be date of birth, so that you can send birthday offers. Whatever it is, make sure that you have a clear reason for requiring that information and spell out to the user what the benefit is for them. Just to prove how valuable welcome emails can be, here's another live customer example. This online retailer retails niche fitness equipment. Now, their welcome emails get an 85% open rate, 52% click-through rate, and they generate £1.08 in additional sales revenue for every one of these emails that they send. And they're able to track those figures exactly through the 123reg email marketing platform. Now, the beauty of these welcome emails is that you put the effort into setting them up once, and then you can just leave them to run. So they're sent at exactly the right time for each new subscriber, but you only have to put the effort in up front. With this example here, they're building trust with the user by giving them some free content in exchange for registering. They're also providing them with an additional offer. But interestingly, it's not the offer itself that generates the additional revenue, it's just the mere fact of driving people back to the website after they've been given something for free. And you get to benefit from the psychological effect of reciprocity here, so people are much more inclined to purchase because you've already given them something. So try and use welcome emails in a creative way to reward your customers and deepen your relationship with them. So how do you go about building high quality data? Firstly, make sure that you're using data to actually understand your customers. Start as simply as possible when you're capturing information. So only ask for the bare information that you need, because you can always get more later. Generally, this means you're just starting with an email address. Provided you've got that, you can use forms and other data capture methods in the future, and we'll automatically be able to match up that data with the same person, so that you can add additional information like date of birth and things like that later on once you've got more of a relationship going with your customer. Always remember that the more effort you ask people to put in by filling in data fields or thinking about what you're asking for, the less likely they are to complete it. So if you can, always start with just asking for an email address and then work from there. It's also really valuable to move beyond collecting just raw data. You want to focus on collecting insights. And we can actually do that in the 123reg email marketing tool by gathering what we call behavioral data. This is information that you'll be able to gather without having to directly ask your customers for it. So we're able to look at things like geolocation information, so where people are when they're opening your emails, what they're clicking on in your email campaigns, which can tell you an awful lot about what they're actually interested in without them having to explicitly tell you. You can also even look at what they're doing on your website, what they're buying in response to your email campaigns. And then you can take that data and within the email marketing tool, actually use it to begin to segment and target different groups of subscribers based on their interests. And this really helps you with the trust part of permission, because what you can then do is start to make your communications much more relevant to different groups of subscribers by reflecting what you know that they're interested in. This, as I say, builds the trust with the subscriber, but also makes them much more likely to purchase from you in the future because you're respecting their time and you're making your communications more relevant to them. Design. Design is a way that gives you an opportunity to stand out in the inbox. I'm going to take a look at a few key considerations that you need to be aware of when you're considering email design. So we're going to take a quick look at the importance of mobile in email design. Is design actually really important to you in the first place? We're going to talk a little bit about content and then discuss testing briefly as well. So how important is mobile in email marketing? Well, if we look back to 2011, we can see that about 27% of all email opens were on mobile devices, so primarily smartphones. And 73% were on desktop at that point. So mobile was starting to become important, but desktop was still the primary way that people were reading emails. If we fast forward to today, we see that as of January 2015, 51% of all UK email opens were happening on mobile devices. So that's tablets and smartphones. So today, for all intents and purposes, email marketing is really mobile marketing. That's the platform that you need to be most concerned with when you're creating your email campaigns. This gives you a real opportunity though, because presently only about 18% of email campaigns are actually optimized for mobile devices. So if you can make sure that your emails look great on mobile, you've got a real opportunity to stand out in the inbox. To do this, we use what we call responsive design. Now, the neat thing is here that in the 123reg email marketing tool, all the emails that you create using our campaign designer will be responsive from the very beginning. Now, what responsive means is that your email campaign will automatically re-render itself to be optimal on the device that someone's viewing on, whether that's a desktop, a tablet, or even a smartphone. The content will automatically resize and reshape itself to give the user the optimum experience. Here's an example of what I mean by this. This is one of our customer campaigns, and this is the same email campaign viewed on a desktop and on a mobile device. As you'll see when viewed on mobile, it's automatically rearranged so that a user can just scroll up and down through the content. Buttons get bigger, the text is resized, and elements that aren't essential on a mobile device are removed so that people viewing it on a small screen have an optimum experience. When you're designing campaigns like this, always remember that users have a very short attention span, and on mobile devices it's even shorter. So be very clear about what it is you want people to do with your campaign, what the key purpose of it is, and try and get that as early in the campaign as possible. So is design actually important to how people will interact with your email campaign? Well, we like to test things and base things on evidence. So in this example here, we took an audience who had previously downloaded a white paper, and we wanted to let them know that the next version of the white paper was available. So we decided to test two versions of an email campaign, one with a design which was very much on brand and that people would recognize, and the other one exactly the same content, but reformatted effectively as a plain text or a rich text message, so that the only thing that they had to see was the text. There was no design, there was no branding involved there, but the messages were exactly the same. Now, in this instance, it's important to recognise that the people receiving this campaign were already very familiar with the brand. They already knew what the concept was, and we only had one key call to action, which was to click and download the new version of this white paper. And what we actually found here is that the rich text version of the message without any branding actually generated 250%, that's 2.5 times more clicks than the highly designed version. So in this instance, putting the emphasis on design actually distracted people from the core thing in the message. Now this of course doesn't apply every time, so we also tested this for an e-commerce retailer, slide 29. And what we found in e-commerce is actually when we included graphics and we included a very clear shop now call to action button, that email campaign generated 3 times the revenue that a plain text campaign did. So it's really important to understand the context that design has on the message, what the type of audience for that particular message, what their expectations are. If you have a very clear, simple message, then you can consider sending out a plain text or a rich text email and using that to cut through and focus people on the core message. But if you have a product or a message that's very visually driven, which most e-commerce ones are, then graphics will generally play a very important part in your message. It's very easy to test this though, as I'll come on to talk about more when we look at analytics. So content is a very important part of your email marketing, and there are 4 key things to be aware of here. So there's copywriting, there are the calls to action in your campaign, there's the importance of style, branding and consistency, and there's also the subject line. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, if you're going to spend time on anything, subject line will get you the biggest benefit for the least amount of words, and it's another way to get a real advantage on your competition. So when you're creating your email and you're writing your copy, a key thing to remember is to try and be remarkable whenever you can. And there are some very simple ways to do this and make sure that you stand out from everyone else. First thing is, whenever you're writing your email campaigns, make sure that you're talking to people individually. You quite often see that people make the mistake of addressing an email newsletter or any kind of email campaign as though they're addressing a group of people. But in reality, you're always talking to one person. It's one individual reading your email message. So always try and write as though you're addressing them directly. It has a real impact on the way that people perceive your message. Next, make sure that you always have something worth saying. Make sure that there's a real purpose behind your email campaign. If you don't have a real reason to be sending that campaign, if it isn't clear to the end user what the benefit to them is of reading that campaign, then don't send it. Wait until you have something that's really of value to them. Again, this plays into the whole concept of trust. Don't be afraid of adding personality to your messages either. Remember, you're talking to individuals, they're interacting with you as an individual, so as long as you can do it on brand, don't be afraid to have a bit of personality and make things interesting. And finally, remember when you're writing that people don't care about you, they care about themselves. So try and frame your content in a way that makes it clear to them what the benefit to them of this content is. Here's an example of what I mean by this. This is an email campaign sent by a small business based up in the Northwest. They run a restaurant, but the way they write their copy is beautifully geared to talk directly to an end user. So they give real examples of how they're serving you better. They put all of the content in the real context of the end user, and they write it in a nice, quirky, fun way that people enjoy reading. And as a result, they get results that are way beyond the average benchmark for the restaurant sector. They get people really engaged with their campaigns, waiting to receive them, enjoying reading them. And as you can see, it's really simple to do. You don't need to have a huge amount of copy to make a big impact like that. It's all about having a bit of personality and understanding your user. As another example, you can really appeal to your users by making things easy for them. Understanding what it is they want from your email campaigns and how they want to do it. In this example, we have a high-end retailer who doesn't expect to drive many sales directly from their email campaigns because they're selling a very high-end product. What they found is that people were saving these emails, they were taking images of the products and posting them onto Pinterest, but they also found that journalists were using these pictures to include in publications as well. And it became very apparent that one of the most important things they could do is make it easy for people to access high-resolution versions of these images. That's what people really valued from these emails. So all they had to do was very simply add a link to download high-res copies of the product images to their email, and they saw as a result of this a massive increase in sales and in people talking about and forwarding on information about their products. Very, very simple change for them to make, one that had a significant impact on their business. And again, it's all about understanding the end user. And again, this all plays back to this idea of generating trust with your customer and showing that you value and understand what it is that they want to do with your emails. So testing. When you've designed your email campaigns, testing is a really important part of the process that you should undertake before you actually send your campaigns out. So there are a number of elements to this. Firstly, make sure that you're previewing your campaign. So you're sending yourself a copy of the campaign. Very easy to do with just one click from within the 123reg email marketing tool. But that makes sure that you actually are checking and viewing in your inbox and understanding exactly what it is your end user is going to get. Next is inbox testing, something else that you can also do. And that's actually will get you screenshots of exactly how your campaign will look in the top email clients of your customers. So you can see how it's going to look on an iPhone or an Outlook 2007 and make sure your campaign is appearing exactly as you want it to. You can also do live testing of your campaigns on your customers. If you have a big enough database, then using split or A/B testing is a really powerful way to see which different messages perform best with your customers. So you can send out different versions of your campaigns to different sample audiences and then assess the results and send the winning campaign to the remainder of your audience. This is a great way to test things like different subject lines or different calls to actions or offers in your email campaigns. And you can even use that data to inform other marketing efforts that you do. So going beyond just what you do with email, but you can see if different wording would apply and would have an impact on your pay-per-click campaigns or what wording you put on your website, even the wording that you use on your flyers. Split testing can give you real insight into what kind of messaging resonates with your audience, and it's very, very straightforward to do. So now that you've gathered your data and you've created your campaign, the next step is actually making sure that it gets delivered to your subscribers. And there are a few important steps to understand here. Firstly, well, what should you expect? Well, if you've gathered your data in the right way, you've got people to opt in, you should be expecting a delivery rate of 97% or above, assuming that you're emailing people at least monthly. And a good open rate would be around 22.8% based on our latest benchmarks. Now, this will obviously vary depending on the type of industry you're in, the size of your lists, the type of communications that you're sending to your customers, but these are good benchmark places to start from. What actually impacts you getting to the inbox in the first place? Well, there are a number of different factors here. First and most important one is your reputation with your customers. So ISPs actually look at how people are interacting with your campaigns in order to understand whether what you're sending them is a relevant communication or whether it's spam. So it's really important to get people opening and clicking through on your campaigns, because that will affect how your email campaigns are likely to be delivered in the future. Another important factor is whether people are complaining about your campaigns. So a lot of ISPs now have the "This is spam" button. You've probably seen it present in Gmail or Yahoo. Now that actually directly has a feedback loop and will affect the delivery of your campaigns to other subscribers on those networks as well. So again, this comes back to the idea of trust, making sure that people understand what they're subscribing to, that they value the relationship with you, and that you're sending them relevant things. Whitelisting is also very important. As I mentioned previously, if you can get people to add your sending address to their address book, that will actually help you get delivered into their inbox every time and avoid spam filters. So that can be a really valuable thing for you. Email content is also a big factor in whether you'll get delivered to the inbox or not. Now, the general rule here is that if it sounds like spam, it's probably going to end up in the junk mail folder. It's not so much about individual hot words and things within the campaign anymore. Email filters are much more intelligent than that these days. But obviously, if you're writing content that sounds spammy, it's not going to give it a good chance of getting through. You also need to be aware of what you're linking to. Again, because of the prominence of phishing emails and things like that, ISPs are getting very intelligent. They will look at where you're linking to. If you're linking to websites that look malicious, then that can affect you getting delivered. Using a valid reply address is also really important. So avoid, if at all possible, using a no reply address in your email campaigns. You want to have a valid address that people can reply to there. This will affect your delivery, but also if people will engage with you in a conversation, that's a really good outcome for you. And again, it all comes back to this idea of trust. And finally, you've got the quality of the HTML code. Now, if you're using an email builder like the one inside the 123 email marketing tool, this won't be a problem for you because your code will automatically be optimized. But if you're creating your own code, make sure that it's well optimized, it's not too heavy, your images are nice and optimized, you're not sending out megabytes of images in your campaigns, otherwise that again will affect your delivery. There are other technical factors that will affect your deliverability as well, but the good news is that these are all taken care of for you behind the scenes by the 123 email marketing tool, so they're not anything you need to worry about. But we take care of all of the technical side of things to make sure that your campaigns have the optimum chance of getting to your subscribers' inbox. So when you get to the inbox, what are the key things that actually impact whether someone will read your emails or not? There are 5 key factors to be aware of here. Sender recognition, subject line appeal, relevance, timing, and content. So sender recognition is a really easy one to get right. That's basically making sure that you use a consistent from name and email address in every campaign that you send out. This is so that people come to recognize that campaigns are from you, and so that you can start to build up that reputation with each ISP so that they understand that people value your campaigns. The next factor is subject line appeal. Now, you generally have 30 to 50 characters on most devices that will be immediately visible to someone before they even open your email campaign. And it's really important that you make the most of this. First question you should be answering in your subject line is why? Why should someone open this? Make sure that you're giving people a clear benefit. Again, you're really selling the idea of why someone should spend their valuable time reading your email campaign, and get that as close to the beginning of your subject line as you possibly can. Try and avoid being cryptic. This can work occasionally if you want to break through and re-engage with subscribers that haven't opened your campaigns in a while, but in general you want to be really obvious with your subject line every time, and in all instances don't lie in your subject line. Don't have a subject line that's not relevant to the content or that will leave users feeling dissatisfied when they open your email, because that's breaking this trust that you're trying to build with a user. And also be aware that what you put in the subject line can actually affect what someone does next after they open your email campaign. So this is an example of what I mean here. In this instance, we sent out a split test of exactly the same email campaign. So the content was the same every time, but the subject line differed. And that's the only thing that changed. So we tested 3 different subject lines. And as you can see here, subject line C, which was the more engaging subject line, actually got nearly double the number of click-throughs of the more basic subject line. So bear in mind that when they opened the campaign, everything else was exactly the same, but by having a more engaging subject line, they actually primed people and made them more willing to actually click through and go to the destination link that was the purpose of sending that campaign in the first place. So it's really worth spending some time crafting a well-written, engaging subject line, because that can significantly impact what happens with your campaign. Relevance. Relevance is also a big factor in whether people will repeatedly open your campaigns. So this comes to factors like using segmentation and personalization to make the campaigns most relevant to your subscribers and make sure that you're sending them to the right subscribers. And the 123reg email marketing tool has some really powerful tools to help you isolate different groups of subscribers and make sure you're sending them the right kind of things. And it also comes back to writing from the reader's perspective. So understanding what's of value to them, writing to that in a way that appeals to them and to what they want to get from the relationship with you. And if you do this consistently, they'll come to understand that your campaigns are relevant to them, they'll want to repeatedly open them, and you're building up this trusting relationship with the subscriber again. Timing is also a big factor in when people will open and engage with your campaigns. Ideally, you want to be sending to people at the time when they're most likely to be there and actively opening your campaign. You don't really want to be in the inbox below a lot of other campaigns that are competing for people's attention. So we did a study to actually look at when people are most likely to open email campaigns, and what we found is that in general, 3 p.m. is when people are most likely to open a marketing email campaign. And we also found that Thursday generally tends to be the most active day for email campaign opens. Now, of course, this does create the problem that now a lot of marketeers have got wise to this and send their email campaigns at 3 o'clock on a Thursday. So you have to be wary that you now face quite a lot of competition at these times. But you can gain another advantage here by actually looking at how your audience in particular interact with your campaigns and bearing in mind how they interact with you as a business. So if you haven't got any other data to base this on, a really good place to start is to look at your website analytics and take a look at when you get peak visits to your website or when you get peak online sales, and aim to send your email campaigns an hour or so before that time. That will generally be the time when you're most likely to get your subscribers at a point where they're willing to and able to interact with your campaigns. For example, we find that quite often for people that are retailing to a consumer audience, Sundays can be a particularly good time, particularly if it's a wet Sunday. People tend to be at home, they're in a good frame of mind, a good position to buy, and actually you generally have very little competition during the weekend. It gets slightly more complicated though, because if you actually look at when people interact with emails on desktop devices versus mobile devices, as you'll see from this graph, people tend to use desktop devices towards the earlier part of the day, whereas as you get towards the evening, people are much more likely to be reading your email on a mobile device, so either a mobile phone or a tablet. So you also want to consider how you want people interacting with your campaigns when you're deciding when to send them. There is another way as well though. Using the marketing automation tools in the 123reg email marketing tool, you can actually allow people to reschedule an email campaign to be resent to them at a more convenient time. So in this example here, we actually gave people the opportunity to reschedule a campaign to be sent to them the next day, the following Friday, or even next week. And all they had to do was click a single link in the email campaign. And that's really simple to do using the 123reg email marketing automation tools. You simply assign a rule to the different links in the email campaign, and within a couple of minutes you can have this set up, and you can then actually let end users choose when they want to receive your email campaign, which is far more powerful than you just deciding when you think it's going to be the most relevant time for them. So let's talk about performance. One of the really powerful things about email marketing is the level of data that you can actually retrieve from your campaigns. Now, when you're sending out a campaign, we can measure all kinds of information. So by default in your reports, when you send out a campaign using the email marketing tool, you'll be able to see how many of your emails were actually delivered, how many people opened those campaigns, who was clicking on which links and when, who was sharing it on social media. If you've set up goal tracking, you'll be able to see things like how many sales they actually generated. And you'll also be able to see how many people unsubscribed from your campaign. And all of this data is really valuable in helping you understand both your relationship with your audience and also how you can improve your campaigns in the future. So open rates are a great way of comparing the performance of one campaign to another when you're sending it out. So understanding how many people actually wanted to engage with your campaign and interact with it. That can help you understand, are you sending at the right time of day? Was your subject line appealing enough? Are you actually getting to the inbox in the first place, or do you have an issue with spam filters there? Click-through rate is really powerful for helping you understand, is the content of your campaign what people are expecting? Are you driving people through to complete the action that you want them to? So are you trying to drive them through to your website? Are you trying to get them to click and make a purchase? An unsubscription rate. Generally, you want to be keeping this as low as possible, generally under 1%. If it's higher than that, it's a good indication that what you're sending out is not what people were expecting to receive. So perhaps you either want to reassess what it is that you're sending, or reassess what your expectations you're setting when people first subscribe to you. But that being said, don't be afraid of unsubscriptions, because if people aren't right for you, you don't want to be sending them email campaigns, because that will ultimately damage your reputation and prevent you from actually getting through to the inbox of the people that do want to receive what you've got to say. So you always want to be making it easy for people to unsubscribe if that's what they want to do. And with the email marketing tool, we'll automatically include unsubscription links in your campaign for you, so there's nothing you need to do to enable that to happen. Click to open rate sounds a complicated term, but actually it's very simple. It's just the proportion of people who opened a particular email campaign and then went on to click a link in it. Now this is actually a really good way of assessing different email campaigns against one another, because it removes the bias of things like open rate of your campaigns, whether it was actually getting properly delivered or not, whether you sent it at a different time of day or not. So if you're going to compare the performance of two of your email campaigns with each other, click to open rate is a great way of doing this. It's also possible to track what happens after someone has clicked through on your email campaign. So you can either use a tool like Google Analytics to see what happens to collective groups of subscribers once they hit your website after clicking through on your email campaign. Now this can give you a really good group insight into what users are doing once they reach your website, and it's very simple to do. You just need to tick one option when you save your campaign in the email marketing tool, and we'll automatically add the tags to make it visible in Google Analytics for you. You can also go one step further and enable our goal tracking if you have an e-commerce website, and that will enable you to track actual purchases that come as a result of your email campaigns and put a hard pounds figure on the revenue that you're generating from your emails. It's really important when you're looking at your metrics to understand what the right metrics are for you and which ones really matter to you and which ones don't, and not get obsessed with metrics that aren't important to your particular campaigns. So always start by thinking about what's the goal of your campaign. If you're an e-commerce merchant and you're trying to drive sales online, then the most important metric for you is probably looking at goals and the hard revenue that's driven from particular campaigns. But perhaps you just want to drive visitors to your website, in which case looking at the click-through rate is probably the most important factor for you. But maybe actually you're just sending out a newsletter where the most important thing for you is that people are reading the content in that email and that they're aware of your company and your brand, in which case open rate is probably the best metric to be measuring. Either way, try and always set yourself a goal when you start and use that as the thing to measure. Benchmarks against other industries are all very well, but at the end of the day, what you want to be aiming to achieve is that with each campaign that you send out, you improve your metrics. You get to know your audience a little bit better. You get to improve your open rate or your click-through rate by making sure that you're engaging with them and sending them relevant content every time. That's it for today's webinar. Thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions, please do leave them in the comments and we'll be happy to answer them for you.